What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy show with me, your host, Tera Roberts. This is the official mailbag show for Player Profiler. It is Wednesday, September 10th. I am taking your questions live, so go ahead and jump in the chat and ask away. We're going to go ahead and dive right in. And excuse me just a little bit throughout the show. I will be pausing for a second and coughing because I don't know. My voice is just like, it's messed up today. It's not making it. But we'll get it. We'll get it done here. Today's gonna be a fun topic. This week's topic is buy or sell week one performances. Week one, it was a special week, right? We had cool breakout performances, amazing. And then we had superstars that disappeared into the abyss. I hope that it treated you well. I hope that it did not drag you down to 0-1, but if it did, that's okay. This was a weird week. Do not take this as any indication of how your fantasy season is going to go. If your worst defense in your fantasy lineup was starting AJ, or not even AJ Brown, it's just starting Ja'Marr Chase, right? Like I have one league where my worst performing player was Ja'Marr Chase. So it's just like, okay, you know what? I feel if everybody else did good, my bench was popping, I feel fine if that's the worst thing that happened to me in week one. So just relax, right? Let's go through some of the news and injury notes here. We'll start off with the good news. And then we'll dive into the bad news. Good news, Brock Bowers, knee injury, not serious. I've seen a lot of people saying, just in case they're picking up Michael Mayer, and that's perfectly fine. If you've got the room to do that, just in case, because as we know, injuries can be not serious for a second and then be super serious all of a sudden. It happens all the time. So it's not a bad thing to be cautious if you have the room there. Otherwise, we're not panicking. It sounds like it's just a minor issue that he could have played through with no problem. Bad news, though. George Kittle, obviously, you guys know, 4 weeks IR, and that's at least because the time frame we were given was 3 to 5 weeks. So, hey, it could be 5 weeks. Who knows? Right? Which means that we've got a definitive bare minimum timeline here, and that means that we have to pivot to different tight ends. Good news is that we have literally a plethora of tight ends to pivot to. So not a major issue, right? It's not good because it was looking like the way that it was looking. Let me tell you, I have George Kittle in my Scott Fishbowl League. And if you know the Scott Fishbowl Leagues, the settings are always crazy. And it's basically this year is the most trumped up tight end premium, beautiful possible stat line if you've got an elite tight end. And I drafted George Kittle, and at first I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, I'm just about to waltz to dominance here. Just like in the scoring settings, he had 24 points. It was going to be beautiful. It started off great, but unfortunately here we have to pivot. And there are some good pivots for us, right? If you did not get the tight end that you want on waivers, right? Because there were a lot of very interesting bids going out because, people have the money to spend. They got the money to spend on these options. So even if you want to still try and get like a backup option, maybe you're not convinced that Quentin Johnston is the one and you want to pivot to a Harold Fannin Jr. or maybe you didn't grab him. Maybe you're saying, I didn't get either of my guys. What do you do? Okay, well, why don't you pivot to a guy like Brenton Strange on waivers? So there's options here. There's ways that we could go. I would not pivot to Jake Tonjas. It's too risky for a guy who has not served as a pass catcher before. It was cool that he got that opportunity last week, but I just wouldn't rely on it when we have so many other guys that are actually offer proven upside and capabilities there. Staying on the 49ers, more bad news here. Brock Purdy, unfortunately, is listed as a long shot is how they described it. More than likely not going to play, potentially out more weeks. The 49ers, man, they can't keep it together in the injury department, unfortunately. This is significant news, right? Because one, we lost Kittle, but we still do have other start-worthy assets in there. My boy Ricky Pearsall with the big week there being one. Now the good news here, also in Juwan Jennings, injured shoulder. He's listed as day-to-day, said it was a scare. Now granted, day-to-day shoulder injury, we still don't know if he would be able to play. So just kind of monitor the practice reports on that, but it doesn't seem like a massive extended issue. So no major issue. He's just getting banged up left and right. Kind of crazy. But good news here. The 49ers have at least gone out and got a competent backup quarterback in Mac Jones. So Mac Jones is back on the table. I've already prepped myself to start my conversation about playing Mac Jones in DFS because you kind of theoretically have to do at least a line with him at his pricing. But again, it's good news because in terms of backup pivots, I mean, Mac Jones is not the worst option. And if you're worried about him and how he affects Ricky Pearsall, we saw him deliver the ball very well to Brian Thomas Jr. last year in Jacksonville. So I will bump Pearsall back a little bit than where I would have had him if Brock Purdy was playing, and even if potentially Jawan Jennings was injured. I mean, that we could just expect a significant workload to Pearsall, but he's still a start-worthy flex option, even with Mac Jones at quarterback here. Another shoulder injury there, unfortunately. And I see you guys dropping questions in the chat. CMAS and Marcelo, I'm gonna get to them in like 1 second here. Drake London, shoulder injury. The shoulders are out of control here. Day to day. So it's possible, and then we got more expected news for him, expected to play. So at least on that one, that sounds awesome. And that's very critical there for Michael Penix, who was somebody who was like, okay, if you're going to waivers and you need a streaming option at quarterback, obviously, not Mac Jones, Daniel Jones. My Jones is there. Daniel Jones had a fantastic week last week, and he's still stream worthy, but I did have to downgrade him in waivers a bit because of the fact that he's playing Denver. And we know that Denver, their secondary is just unbelievable, right? It's going to give him fits. Now, the good news is that he does have rushing upside. So if you're in a deeper league or even a super flex league, I would absolutely start him as my QB too. You might be able to go that direction. But my preferred pivot there is definitely Michael Penix, especially that now we know for sure that he has Drake London. We still have to monitor Darnell Mooney. That one's still a little bit unclear there. And that also affects Kyle Pitts as well, who is bumped up to a streaming option as well. So we got options here. Evan Ingram, unfortunately, we got bad news at tight end, calf injury. We don't have a lot of clarity on that one at that point. I still do say, regardless, I struggle a little bit with the Denver offense and Sean Payton's inconsistencies outside of Courtland Sutton, who I trust with my life. No, not with my life. That's a little dramatic, but who I trust on a weekly basis to get it done. Peyton's inconsistencies are just kind of weird there, right? That's why when we were looking at my top 10 waiver wire list, I did not have Troy Franklin on there because in deeper leagues, you might want to take that stab. But in more shallow leagues, it's just kind of like a weird one where you don't know who to trust on a week-to-week basis there. And then wrapping up injury news with a couple of ones, and I'll dive into these questions here. Will Shipley, obviously the fractured ribs, Tank Bigsby trade. I will talk about that more in detail because there's multiple layers to that. Xavier Worthy, shoulder injury. They say he's going to work through it. We don't have a timeline on that. At this point, we are operating as if Hollywood Brown is the first look in that offense. Clear target for volume there. So very start-worthy option this week if Xavier Worthy is out. I will say if Worthy does play by some reason or by some miracle, he does. That kind of nips things a little bit in terms of trust for Hollywood Brown because they would move him around a little bit more there. Jumping to the chat here from CMAS. How would you rank PPR rest of season, Ollie Gordon, Bashal Tootin, and Dylan Sampson? So this is difficult, right? So one, PPR does add the little caveat there. And then two, this would be a lot easier to rank if we didn't have the massive question marks around Miami. So when I'm looking at these three individually here, only one of these players actually has a potential a potential weekly fantasy relevant role at this point, rest of season. So ignoring, like right now, obviously we know that Dylan Sampson would be the play, but if we're looking rest of season here, I still like Sampson in the fact that I think he can play a complementary role to Quinshon Judkins. Because at some point, and I'm not going to speculate on it because this is a podcast, and more than likely we might get news about Judkins in his NFL meeting after this podcast or before this podcast airs to the podcast audience. But regardless of what happens there, when we're looking at Dylan Sampson playing off of Quinshon Judkins, we do have to remember, like, similar to a guy like Kenneth Walker, but maybe even a little bit different there. Judkins was playing a shared committee role there with Travion Henderson at Ohio State. And we would expect him to handle early down work. And we don't know the degree to which we can trust him on in pass protection, third downs, and how Cleveland views him from a receiving perspective. And we don't know that because we didn't get to see a lot of that, unfortunately, because he missed a massive chunk of OTAs in preseason. So it makes it difficult to trust. We do know there is that we saw Dylan Sampson do very well from that perspective this week. And while obviously Judkins is the higher pick here, I kind of prioritize Sampson over these other two guys because I know that in addition to being a handcuff and clear handcuff, because he looked decidedly better than Jerome Ford, and we know what Jerome Ford is. We've seen him for years. Dylan Sampson is the better back. So if we're looking from a pure handcuff perspective, if Quinshon Judkins is the lead back and he goes down, Dylan Sampson would be massively on the table again for, RB1 upside there. So we've got potential standalone value for Sampson as he can play this third down complementary pass catching back role opposite of Quinshon Judkins rest of season. Again, not this week specifically, because we don't know the status of Judkins. And, if I were speculating and based off my rankings, I do have Sampson higher right now because it's tough to imagine that we would get a significant workload for Judkins. But I like that combination of handcuff and individual upside there. So Sampson is the guy that I would have highest rest of season on here. And then between Ollie Gordon and Bashal Tutin, I'm going to lean towards Bashal Tutin. Now, neither offense for Miami or Jacksonville looked particularly good, unfortunately, in week one. But what I will say is that ultimately, I kind of think that game might have been a little bit weird due to the weather delay being so long. Both teams just looked like Jacksonville looked a little bit better before and then looked decidedly awful afterwards. So maybe the long layoff had some kind of massive effect there. But when I'm looking at it long term there, Tutin, I think, has the higher upside and opportunity. And then Ollie Gordon, I am more concerned about that Miami offense in the direction that they are going there, unfortunately. So it's backwards there for me. And the way that you listed it is Sampson, Tutin, and then Ollie Gordon here. Question from Marcelo. Would you trade away Benson for Charbonnet? Have PPR. I don't have Walker or Connor. Thanks. Yes, I would. And it's difficult because I actually do really like Trey Benson, and I liked him heading into the season as well. I think that kind of standalone value is going to stick for rest of season. Arizona did exactly what we thought that they were going to do. They said it. I don't know why and that was why James Conner, when one of my shows that I did on Bleacher Report was a overrated or underrated in terms of ADP. And I said, James Conner overrated. Got a little bit of pushback on that, understandably so, because he's been so reliable in the past. But when a team says, and even the running backs are saying it, everybody's saying that there's going to be a 1B situation with Trey Benson, that's for real. Now, that being said, I do not think he will upend James Conner. We're looking at a additional back in the backfield, right? Two guys working. Now, if Conner goes down, we would have massive upside for him. But with Charbonnet, I think he legitimately has the chance to steal the job. And I don't feel like don't hold my feet to the fire with that one and clip that. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm saying it's a possibility in higher likelihood over Benson. So yes, I would trade Benson for Charbonnet, especially considering that Walker does tend to get banged up quite a bit, and he's already been banged up early. And part of my worry there with him is maybe that week one was that little foot soreness that they were talking about in the preseason. Maybe that was still a little bit of an issue there for him. Shout out to James Small. Thank you for tuning in. Shout out to Derek Lincoln. Thank you for tuning in. And Jordan Pippen. Jordan Pippen. What is up with the running backs in San Diego? I said San Diego. I'm sorry. That was a little Freudian slip there. In Los Angeles there with the Chargers. I do that every now and then. Forget a team has actually moved. Unfortunately, so first of all, I will say this. Do not judge Omarion Hampton based on his effectiveness in week one. One thing that I know for sure when it comes to defenses, Kansas City's run defense is up there above. I hold them kind of up there above everybody else, to be honest. You cannot run on them. They are excellent run defense. Omarion Hampton getting the vast majority of carries. The workload was fantastic. The fact that he wasn't efficient with it, I don't care, because it was a terrible matchup, and I would not expect anyone, even the most elite backs, to unfortunately be able to penetrate that Kansas City line. They just have excellent run defense there. So I trust him still as a lead back. Now, we've heard that we are going to get an increased workload for Najee Harris, and that's to be expected. We knew that there was going to be additional back usage. We knew that they wanted to not use Najee Harris. And that is the reason that in my draft rankings, I still held Omarion Hampton a little bit further back in the rankings. I couldn't move him up above guys like Chuba Hubbard, right? Someone that had a 3-down back, very secure role. And the reason for that is when you're looking at that backfield, Najee Harris is just a back that coaches love. Very reliable. He's not going to fumble. He's going to be solid in pass protection. He's going to just get the job done as is. He's not going to give you more than you need, right? He's not going to give you massive explosive runs, but you can trust him. And that's the thing that coaches love. And he'll always be involved from that perspective when you've got just such a reliable veteran running back that can play off of a rookie running back and do like a little bit of thunder in Najee Harris and more lightning plus thunder in Omarion Hampton, if that makes sense. So I think we're going to see a mild increase of Najee this week. We'll still see Omarion Hampton as the lead back. We should be seeing a more productive day from Hampton. What is interesting, though, and why I will not be ranking Hampton higher than a low-end RB2, major issue there is that we got a lot more pass volume than we expected from Justin Herbert. And again, that is to be expected, because for every bit of great that Kansas City's defense is against the run, it is absolutely awful against the pass. Like, they're just legitimately, they struggle to stop the pass. And I don't feel like they did enough to adjust and change that in the offseason, unfortunately. So when you're looking at that, that makes sense that Justin Herbert went off the wide receiver, heavy volume and whatnot, but he's so good at it. It doesn't make logical sense that they will come around for the rest of the season and say, nah, shut it down. We're just going to run the ball. I think they'll be more balanced for sure. And we're not going to get some aggressive, heavy run volume from the Chargers. I think they've got flexibility in their offense. They showed it in week one, and that was good to see. They have so many talented pass catchers and options. So it's going to be probably a very balanced approach. Omarion Hampton will be a low-end RB2. But I wouldn't expect him to ascend to that level of where I think a lot of people were thinking that he would be a weekly RB1. I don't trust it to that extent. Thank you, Brian. I hope, it's just, I have this nagging cough that never ends. And I got to figure out how to fix it. And when I start to talk a lot throughout the day, and then I get to these shows at the end of the day, sometimes my voice goes sideways here. From CMAS, is Worthy worth holding on to? Pick 2, rest of season. Two questions. Is Worthy worth holding on to? And then pick 2, rest of season. PPR, Tillman, Mooney, Booty, Iomaner. So yes, I would still hold on to Worthy. We have to, just because for all we know, for real, it really could be something that keeps him out 1 week and he's good to go next week. It could go either way, right? They have said he is not going to have surgery. Now, he could get out there, realize that the pain is too much to play through, and need to have surgery. And rehab is not enough to get him there. But right now, the timeline is too ambiguous for us to go and drop him. especially given the promise that he showed last season. So we got to hold on. I know it's painful. I know you want that roster spot, but you got to hold on right now for sure until we know definitively. Sucks, but that's the direction we got to go. And then pick 2 rest of season PPR, Tillman, Booty, and Aya Maynor. While I like the upside, I do think that Booty could legitimately be the most productive wide receiver in that offense for New England. I would not put it past him. He was on my waiver wire list. I like the ad, and I do like Aya Maynor because, again, that wide receiver 2 spot very clearly belongs to him. That target share was very direct there. Ridley is the 1. Aya Maynor is the 2. We just got to wait for Cam Ward to get more comfortable and get into better matchups. And we should see Aya Maynor ascend to being a flex option at some point, right? Not this week, unfortunately. Not this week, unfortunately. I think the volume is going to continue to increase, but this is another very difficult defensive matchup for him, unfortunately. But when we're looking at Tillman and Mooney, those are the 2 right there, rest of season. I'm a big Darnell Mooney fan, believer since the rookie season. He's a solid wide receiver too. Michael Penix looked very, very good in week 1. And the thing about Atlanta and why I like the Atlanta offense as a whole is the fact that Atlanta was actually a very high volume team, like in terms of actual yardage. Lots of plays, lots of yardage last season. Unfortunately, it did not translate to touchdowns, and it came with a lot of turnovers because Kirk Cousins was highly ineffective with that volume. All Michael Penix has to do is get in there and just be competent, and that's exactly what he did. Like the opportunity is there. The system works. Just get in there and don't turn the ball over and everybody will be fine. And that's what we saw. So Mooney has legitimate wide receiver 2 upside on a weekly basis rest of the season. And then Tillman showed us basically that what we saw last year was not a blip. He is reliable from a wide receiver 2 perspective. And to that extent, that target tree was very, very clear. They're not using a 3rd wide receiver. They're using 2 tight ends. So it is Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, David Njoku, Harold Fannin Jr. So those are the 2 that are my preference there. But we're actually going to take a wee bit of a break here and hear a word from our sponsors. And we'll be right back after this.
If you play in Dynasty, you need Dynasty Deluxe, our premium package for Dynasty Leaguers. We rank over 300 players, updated every week, all year long. And there's a win now mode and a rebuild mode with Superflex and tight end premium controls. And a Dynasty League sync where you can say, sync down all of my sleeper teams, all my FFPC teams. And then you can browse around your leagues for who has needs. And then you can use our trade finder to see what kinds of trades are happening in leagues that are similar to the one I want to do. Then you can analyze trades using our trade analyzer, which balances the lifetime value, which includes pick values out to like 2028. All of that plus the rookie guide, $25 value is included. So if you're just in one Dynasty League, Dynasty Deluxe is well worth it. And use your host's promo code, and you can bump up to all in and get $25 off.
Promo code is Tera, Tera. All right. But the packages are very good, by the way. So if you want to try that out, just go ahead and use my promo code. But jumping back into the questions here, let's knock some of these out and then get a little bit into the meat of the show. But I don't mind pivoting here if you guys are still asking questions, because at the end of the day, I'm here to answer questions, right? So drop them in the chat here. From Kyle, should I trade Pickens? Let's see, Pickens up for AJ Brown. I think there was a second comment. Pickens and Troy Franklin and a 3rd for AJ Brown and a 7th. Yes, I would absolutely do that for sure. For sure. For sure. If you can do that, for sure. Because you're wanting to trade for AJ Brown. And I think he's very acquirable right now. I roster AJ Brown in Dynasty, and I'm angry about that week 1 performance. But the reality here is that one, you're getting him at a potential depressed value here because we're coming off the stench of last season, which overall was not a bad season, right? But it was well below expectations for what we had typically seen in terms of consistency from AJ Brown in the prior seasons with Philadelphia. And obviously the concern and the connection there would be, oh my God, Saquon Barkley came in and nobody can eat from a pass perspective. So week 1 just kind of ignites that fear. Now, I do think he will bounce back. I think the week 1 performance from both the receivers was more indicative of the matchup. It seemed like the Dallas defense, their strength is in the secondary. It seemed like they were really clamping them down out there. And it was just easy for them to just avoid the pass from that perspective, have everything underneath, and then rely on the legs of their very talented runners, inclusive of Jalen Hurts. So it's not a massive concern for me. So I think it's fine to make that trade. And if you want a low ball, perfectly fine. From Brian Moore, am I on the Cam Ward bandwagon? I'm not on the Cam Ward bandwagon, but I will say that I'm not a Cam Ward hater, and I have been impressed with him thus far. Week 1 was not a pretty stat line, but when you look at him and really all throughout preseason too, he looks like an NFL quarterback who is not panicked in any way, shape, or form. We don't see him out there like eyes big. There's little problems here and there in terms of a little bit of accuracy here, but overall, he seems very competent, understands the system, and this is just something that they're going to work through. This is just a young rookie developing. So I feel very positive about him, and I think it's promising. I don't know that the coaching staff is it. I don't know if that coaching staff is it, but what I do know is that Ward has looked competent, and he's got a fine wide receiver 1 in Calvin Ridley. Iron Maynard has stepped up as well. So, and Tony Pollard, of course, is just very reliable in the backfield. So overall, there's opportunity for him. From Chris Plynn, who would you start, Fields or Mayfield? Oh, that's perfect. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if you are the person who asked this question or not. It's different usernames, but this is actually a mailbag question. So perfect. Let's kill 2 stones with 1, because we've got this one from Chris Flynn, and then on Twitter from Spare Jordan asked the same exact one: would I start Fields or Baker Mayfield? And this is, they're both top 12 quarterbacks for me. I have Fields at 8 currently and Baker Mayfield at 12 currently. So both very start-worthy options. But when you, with Justin Fields and where he went, you get the luxury of where you're going to be having these situations where you probably have Fields and somebody else, and you're going to be making that decision on a regular basis here. I would go with Justin Fields. Now, the matchup is interesting, right? Because the Bills defense obviously technically got obliterated in week 1, but that was kind of an anomaly. And also from a pass perspective, they weren't lit up technically through the air. They were lit up on the ground. Now, that's not to say that they gave Lamar Jackson fits or anything. He had a fine day from a passing perspective. It was efficient. It just wasn't aggressive volume. Obviously, Zay Flowers was fantastic. We got the catch from DeAndre Hopkins as well. So I think they're beatable through the air. I just don't know if it's going to be that offensive explosion that we saw in that Sunday night game. That was crazy. But I feel good about him. And really, again, when you look at the rushing upside and what Lamar was able to do with his legs, Justin Fields has that same upside. Obviously not the same player, but he has that. He's that same profile, right? So I feel good about him against Buffalo. Baker Mayfield, again, fine option this week, but we want to go with the upside of Fields, and we've also feel like we got a very safe floor for him. It's funny. I will say that Justin Fields is one of those guys who I feel like we're constantly having to defend him, right? You can have a perfectly fine game, looked good, accurate. I mean, the connection with Garrett Wilson was incredible. Garrett Wilson was out there praising him, because why would he not? I mean, spoiler alert, aside from like George Pickens, which, it's hard to make George Pickens happy anyway, regardless. And plus, that was a weird kind of situation where they were kind of offensively handcuffing Justin Fields in Pittsburgh, making it more of a game management situation. But when we look at Chicago with DJ Moore, when we look at, even Darnell Mooney had a little moment there before he came in. And when we look at Garrett Wilson now, the wide receiver ones love Justin Fields, okay? Say what you want, man. DJ Moore was sad to see him go. You almost saw tears in the man's eyes. So I feel good about where he is. I think we'll get some decent pass volume there. Overall, I like what I saw. I feel very comfortable with starting him as a top 10 quarterback here. I'm with Ramesh O'Brien's comment here. Prediction: Fields till the wheels fall off. Yeah, he's it's just one of those things where, and credit to the Jets as well. It was funny how both the Jets and Pittsburgh just feel like better fits for each quarterback, literally flipping the situation. Uh, I thought that the Jets, despite losing the game, it was a good start for the system. The offensive system worked. I like what I saw out of Breece Hall. I like the little usage of Braylon Allen. We can get greedy and say we would have liked to have Breece Hall getting some of those goal line and red zone touches. But at the end of the day, we knew that they were trying to replicate Detroit's offense, and it appears that they're replicating it better than Detroit. Now, granted, it's week 1, but we see Detroit over there trying to figure out life after Ben Johnson. And now we see New York over here implementing Ben Johnson's system, and it seems to be working out very well for everyone. So we roll with it until we hear otherwise. Comment from Uncle Ted that you really like Miles Sanders. I still worry about Miles a little bit. I think the juice is gone, unfortunately. He had that little breakaway run where he got chased down here. I think at the end of the day, this is Javonte Williams' backfield. He showcased that he looked like a different back from last season. I don't think we got to talk about it on this. No, we didn't, because we haven't been live on this channel since the game. The thing about Javonte Williams and why I was okay with drafting him. I got a lot of Javonte. I had a lot of Javonte Williams on my bench. Useless points there. Awesome. But the reason why I like Javonte Williams as the guy that you should pick out of that backfield is because arguably, and he said this, now you have to take it with a grain of salt, right? But multiple running backs always say this. Sometimes you just don't feel right, even a year after your major injury. And to his credit, maybe it took him an additional year, because he does look a lot different than what he did in Denver. Like, watching him in Denver felt physically painful. Watching him this past week, he looked like the running back that we saw before the injury. So credit to him on that one. Let's see here. Yeah, we got lots of Miles Sanders talk in the chat. Michael Beeson picked up Trey Benson as my RB5 behind RJ Harvey, Bijan Robinson, DeAndre Swift, Dylan Sampson. Was going to drop Braylon Allen for Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, but someone picked him up. Yeah, you got a solid little grouping right there. And yeah, I mean, the right move there would have been to drop Braylon Allen. But I think ultimately, keeping him on your bench if you still got him is perfectly fine there. Again, when we're looking at that Jets offense, he's got standalone value there. The little budget version of David Montgomery is what I call him. We need to see the offense go and provide him. He's got to capitalize on the goal line opportunities, but it was good here. Uncle Ted, Rashard Smith is the chief to add. I love Rashard Smith. Really do. Loved him all season. I was hoping that we would see, now maybe they have to script it a little bit, but I was hoping that we would see a little increased usage from him from a receiving perspective with Xavier Worthy out. Maybe that was something they couldn't pivot to mid-game, and maybe we see a little increased usage coming up. But they spoke very, he's a former receiver, right? They spoke very glowingly of him in terms of him from a receiving perspective all offseason, the Chiefs did. From TB plus BB6, is hype for Harold Fannin Jr. real? Would he be the best streamer over Henry, Juwan Johnson, or Strange this week? I have, so the hype is real, right? We have to, so one, we do have to exercise a little bit of caution because it is not unusual. Someone used someone used Isaiah Likely as a good example of where secondary tight end goes off in week 1, disappears rest of the season. So what I will say is that we do have to exercise some level of caution, right? And not throw caution to the wind of saying, okay, he's clear tight end 1, top 10, rest of season, fantastic. But we do have to take into account that like that type of usage for a rookie in terms of the snaps that he played, the routes that he ran, we do have to take it seriously here. So he is a streaming option this week, but he is not a streaming option over Juwan Johnson for me. He is not let me look at my rankings here. I have them pulled up because I know for sure I have Juwan over him, but I can't remember about Britton Strange. Yes. So I have Britton Strange over him and Juwan Johnson over him. I do not have Hunter Henry over him, but that one I am kind of flexible on. I could move Henry up, and it's purely matchup based because of the matchup there with Miami being potentially like we're going to learn a lot real quick about Miami. You got torn apart by Daniel Jones. Let's see if you get torn apart by Drake May as well, and in an even worse way here. So in theory, I think this might be a good matchup here for Hunter Henry. They're all kind of hovering around that area. But for me, I do lean towards, in particular, Britton Strange and Juwan Johnson. Britton Strange was shaping up to have a very good day before the weather delay. Again, that weather delay just made things kind of weird. It was looking like it was a great day from him from a streaming perspective. And it was still an okay day, but it wasn't what I think it should have been. And I like the matchup against Cincinnati here. So Strange is the guy that I would go with first, for sure, because matchup is fantastic. We saw what the combination of those Cleveland tight ends did to Cincinnati last week, so expect that type of potential upside for Strange. Then Juwan Johnson, because I am a big believer in the usage. Like I got a little pushback. It's fine. You get pushback every now and then regarding Juwan Johnson in his production and saying, hey, it doesn't always stick for him. Now, granted, that's true of a lot of people here. But what I will say here with Juwan Johnson is that his usage has not stuck in the past because the team and the regime was in love with Taysom Hill. This is a new regime, right? We've got a new coach. We do not have Taysom Hill. He's not healthy. He is not on the field. It is Juwan Johnson. That is why I like him so much moving forward here because we're not expected to get Taysom Hill anytime soon. Juwan Johnson ran the most routes of anyone, more than Chris Olave, more than Rashid Shaheed. He was on the field more than both of those players. You cannot ignore that level of production. It's not a blip of somebody randomly getting a decent amount of targets when they're on the field for like 50% of snaps. No, they integrated him significantly into the offense, and he is the only one, and he thrived off of it. Excuse me. He thrived off of it and he was successful. So you got to let go of past when regimes change, right? That would be as if you looked at Jonnu Smith last year on a new team with Miami and said, well, Jonnu's never done this before to this level. Okay, well, it's a new situation, new team, new offense. You got to be flexible in the way that you view people. Fannin Jr. is somebody that we need to stash, right? And someone who is a streaming option this way, if you're in a deeper league and you don't have any of those options, I'm perfectly fine with that. But we just need to be aware that it's possible that was just a blip, right? So a little bit of caution, but when a rookie pops like that, you pay attention. From James Small, Samson or Najee Harris, PPR, Samson for sure. Samson for sure. Again, this is a podcast. So the podcast audience may have more news about Quentin Judkins when you're listening to this, but as of right now, it is Wednesday night. All we know is that he met with the NFL disciplinary committee. He did not, which means he did not practice. Which again, I find it hard to believe that he would be, even if the NFL says tomorrow there is no issue. You can play. I find it hard to believe that a rookie running back that did not get time in OTAs or preseason is going to come in and get 20 carries. That doesn't seem like an intelligent thing to do. Now, that said, sometimes Cleveland doesn't do intelligent things, but this even seems a little bit too far-fetched for them, right? So Samson, I think, who was clearly the better back over Jerome Ford. It wasn't close. It was not close. And the pass catching upside as well. Samson is someone who I do feel oddly comfortable with this week as a flex option. And if Judkins doesn't play at all, I mean, even a low-end RB2 is where I might end up on that. So over Najee for sure, especially in PPR, because you got to remember in PPR, Najee, at least right now, is not going to be getting those receptions. And that's no negative towards him. He can, but just in the context of the offense and Omari and Hampton being the priority there, I would expect him to have a little bit lesser value for sure. Brian Moore, because we had Xavier Worthy talk earlier here with the trade Worthy for sure. If you can get out of it and trade him, that is an excellent opportunity here. I'll speed up here on these questions here because I think we got a good bit to go through here. From Bisco, Etienne, running backs are Etienne, Walker, Sharbs, RJ Harvey, Caleb Johnson, Judkins. I'm cooked. It's better than you think. Because one, in a perfect world, hopefully Walker and Charbonnet don't get into some kind of awful muddied committee. Hopefully someone is separated as the RB1 there. So, hey, you got both. Somebody's going to pan out, right? Hopefully you don't get in a awful committee. Etienne, yeah, it sucks. I mean, we kind of got bailed out a little bit there at the end of the game. But I'm high-key concerned about Miami's offense. High-key concerned. I fear Mike McDaniel is not long for this NFL world. Man. He's all vibes, and coaching is a little bit. It's a little bit, just a little bit. And Etienne is so talented, right? But Tua looked awful, objectively awful. I can blame coaching and whatnot, but coaching didn't make him do all of that. So I am concerned. I mean, I'm concerned why he came out and looked like that, because he has performed at a much higher level in the past, and that is not something I expected. That was weird there. Harvey, you could pan out with at some point, just based off the pure fact that we do have that injury history with Dobbins there. So all hope is not completely lost. But your follow-up to that is, who should you start with Etienne? I still have Kenneth Walker ranked higher for this week. The reason for that is, unless I get so here's the way that I'm playing it. I don't have Walker, but no, I got Walker in one league. Here's the way that I'm playing it. Unless Seattle specifically says, hey, this is a split backfield, or hey, we're going to be using both running backs, or hey, we're going to go with the hot hand. If those words come out of their mouth, I would lean towards Charbonnet because he would look decidedly better, right? But if those words don't come out of their mouths, I have to assume that Kenneth Walker is still the RB1, and that last week's usage was related to the fact that he did not play at all in preseason and was sidelined with some kind of foot soreness, right? So perhaps they had to do some kind of ramp up process for him, because it wasn't just sitting your starter in a preseason game. He legitimately was technically out, right? So that being a possibility makes me say, okay, I'm going to give it a 1 week status there. So I would still go with Walker. You still have to this week, because it could have just been, again, a little ramp up there. Unless Seattle specifically tells us something, that would be nice if they could just tell us, right? Or it's so easy to say hot hand. Those words can come out your mouth. Just let us know, right? But we'll go with Walker, unfortunately. Uncle Ted, Bengals suck against tight ends, though. In terms of tight ends, they do. They do a lot, for sure. They suck against everybody. And then Noah Fant is the tight end one on the Bengals. So I don't trust any of the Bengals tight ends. This is a really good point to make with them. They utilize 3. And there is no trust level that I have with any of them on a weekly basis. One could have a good week, then the other could have a good week. I think that they don't view any of them as the tight end one. They use them interchangeably. It is truly not something that I can trust at all. So there's very little chance, unless an injury happens or something, that I'll ever have any of them as a streaming option, just because I would prefer to go with guys that I actually know are the tight end one. I know Britton Strange is the tight end one. I know Zach Ertz is the tight end one. I know Jawan Johnson is the tight end one. I don't know that about Noah Fant, Gesicki, or was it Drew Sample? I don't know these things about them, unfortunately. So they're all on the field significantly. Chat is live this week. Let's see here. We have Timbo Slice. Yeah, the chat is live. We've done a little pivot here. I was going to talk buy or sell. Now, technically, we are doing like buy or sell reactions to week 1 breakouts and stuff that are actually like baked into the comments as we're doing start sit. So I didn't go off topic here. I stayed on topic. I'm just going with the questions live. We're pivoting here. That's what we're doing. I prepped this whole show. That just means that I'll like instead make a video about it. Perfect. Like that's yeah. So expect a video about more buy or sell players. Because we were going to talk about Nico and AJ Brown and all that, but you guys are live in the chat, so that's what we're going with. I love it. From Timbo Slice. Hello, everyone. Pick up Dante Thornton or Kayshon Boutte. 1 bench spot left. I hate this because I do love Thornton. I do, but I would go with Kayshon Boutte. I still hold faith in do not want to let go of the potential of Dante Thornton because, again, we saw a little taste of what he can do in week 1. The problem is that when you're just, looking at volume in general compared to Kayshon Boutte, Kayshon can factually be the first look at that offense. He can be the wide receiver 1. He was the de facto wide receiver 1. And I don't trust Stefon Diggs' longevity, unfortunately, throughout the entire season. As I've talked about, like on the podcast before with Stefon Diggs, I've defended him in the past, but we have had a far too specific instance of him. Last year was due to injury, but prior to that, second half of the year, dramatic dip in fantasy production. Prior year, dramatic dip in fantasy production. So I don't know if Stefon Diggs is capable of being productive for an entire season. I think Boutte has upside as potentially the first look in that offense, wide receiver 1 for Drake May. Thornton must contend with Brock Bowers, with Jacoby Myers, who looked fantastic. Holdout did nothing for him in a negative way. He looked amazing. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot going on there. And then there's Trey Tucker as well, who always has involvement. So I would go with Boutte, even though I love Thornton. Shout out to follow Rob Thomas. What's up in the chat? From Samuel Adeo. Drop Chubbs or Ollie Gordon for Judkins. I like Gordon's potential. Gordon does have potential, but I don't know that potential will never manifest unless Devon Etienne goes down. So I would prioritize Judkins because he can be an RB1 and nobody has to go down for it. That can just outright be his job that he has. Gordon does not have that ability to push Devon Etienne out the way. It's just not going to happen. So I would hold on to Chubb and I would drop Ollie Gordon for Judkins. Chubb is the RB1. It wasn't an inspiring performance, but again, I give a little bit of grace on that because the Rams defense is just a juggernaut. Their line is just stupid at this point. They're so talented. So talented. So I wasn't expecting much out of Chubb in this matchup. And at the end of the day, he is the RB1 for that team. And they're more than likely not going to pivot from him, in my opinion. It's just whether or not he makes it through an entire season, which probably doesn't happen. But I would still lean towards Judkins. Now, if you don't need Chubb as a starter and you don't think he has a ton of upside, and you want to drop Chubb for Judkins because you really want to hold on to Gordon, I'm not opposed to that. Because at the end of the day, you want guys with upside. And if you're never going to put Chubb in your lineup, then I'm okay with making that decision there. Let's see. Oh, Samuel is spare Jordan. Yay. So we got your question. Awesome. Timbo Slice to the chat. Javonte Williams or James Cook starting Dak. Starting Dak does make it a little bit irritating, but James Cook is the one that I have higher for sure. No, I like Justin Fields, but I'm a Packers fan. I'm a Packers fan, but no, people often don't know because I don't show bias here towards them. I keep it real with them. From Nathan Neely, pick 2 rest of season between Knicks, Dak, or Herbert. Oh, and then who would you start this week? Only stack that you would have is Dak and CD. Oh man, you've got really good options there. So it would be Dak that I would drop between, if you got to drop one and you're picking 2 rest of season, it is Knicks and Herbert. Again, what we saw out of Knicks. Now, granted, week 1 was concerning. I'm not going to lie, because I have said, and maybe I'm wrong. I said that I do not believe that Knicks will get hit with second-year regression, because what we saw out of CJ Stroud in terms of regression was heavily influenced by their offensive line being trash. And Knicks' offensive line is adequate. They've got a fantastic defense. The receiving core is strong enough. The running backs, you got multiple strong options. It shouldn't be an issue there. But week 1 raised a little bit of a red flag, right? So it is concerning. But I at this time, I still have Knicks higher than Dak. And I definitely have Herbert higher than Dak as well. Because, again, Justin Herbert looks sharp in week 1. Now, granted, again, don't expect that level of fantasy production on a weekly basis because, again, Kansas City is an excellent matchup for the pass. But that said, he looked so good. So from that perspective, I do have to pass on Dak. I know that's your stack there. This week, the guy that I would start is Herbert. I have Herbert as my QB. Let's see how quickly these rankings will update. Herbert is my QB 6, and Dak is my QB 11. I like them match up against the Giants here. I like them for a nice little bounce back here. And then Knicks is QB 14 against Indianapolis. I'm holding him back a little bit. 1, because I'm concerned about what we saw in week 1, but 2, it's entirely possible that Indianapolis's defense made a little bit of a leap there. They weren't dreadful last season, and they have young talent. So perhaps that young talent actually pulled through. So I'm holding a little bit of reserve there for them. We'll speed up a little bit so I can catch up to the chat here. And also, we're getting towards the end of the stream, and I got kids to put to bed. And read stories too. From Arnold Woodley Jr., can I trust Pacheco this week? Nope. I have one team with Pacheco, and I'm pulling him out of my starting lineup. That sucker is gone for Travion Henderson. I trust Travion Henderson more than I trust Pacheco, because at least I know with receptions, Travion Henderson can get me to double-digit fantasy points. I don't trust Pacheco to do that at this point. I feel a little scared on that one. The chat is so much fun here. From Kai, I see all your comments as I'm catching up here. From Kai, Juwan Johnson or Hunter Henry to start full PPR. I'm going with Juwan, especially in full PPR. Although I will say, again, I think this matchup could be very potentially juicy here for Hunter Henry for sure. But I lean towards Juwan Johnson. It's close, though. I do like Hunter Henry a lot, but I'm okay with going with Juwan. Again, I have their rankings are like super similar to me. Maybe 3 spots between them. I have 2 spots between them. I have Juwan at 16 and Hunter at 18. I don't mind the matchup for Juwan. San Francisco obviously is a good team, but they're not unbeatable 2 tight ends here. Let me show this comment from Uncle Ted of Tyreek back from the Chiefs would be fire, because I agree. The Dolphins say they are not they're taking trade calls, and they're saying no way. I guess they're delusional, and they think that week 1 was a little bit of a blip. But I don't know, man. Vegas, before the week started, said that Josh McDaniels, too many McDaniels in McDonald's. Mike McDaniels was the most likely to lose his job. So, yeah. Oh, from Abreu, 68. Rate my team. 10 team, full PPR, Murray, Mayer. Okay, wait. Or I guess probably May. Murray/May at quarterback, running back, Kamara, Bucky, Pollard, Travion Henderson, Ollie Gordon, Dylan Sampson, Trey Benson, wide receivers, Lamb, AJ Brown, Pearsall, Worthy, tight end, Tyler Warren. Thanks, Miss Fantasy. This is a beautiful Tera team. If you follow me preseason, you know that things that I love to see on there. Obviously, I like Kyler, but in May, obviously. But from a running back perspective, Kamara, Tony Pollard after the Tajay Spears injury. Henderson is my preferred, other than Ashton Genty running back from a rookie perspective. Love Ollie Gordon, Dylan Sampson, Trey Benson as well, was somebody who I was like, okay, hey, we're mildly concerned about James Conner. You hit their decent in terms of volume wide receivers early, and then Pearsall was obviously someone I love to see pro Pearsall people because he got a lot of hate preseason and skepticism. And then Target at tight end. That was my favorite thing to do, was fade early tight end and wait on Tyler Warren or Tucker Kraft. So I love your team. A+. I love it. Johnny Smith from Ride Some Waves. Johnny Smith, double-digit fantasy points. Yes, it wasn't high volume in terms of yardage. That's the only concern there. I have trust issues with Arthur Smith. It's very inconsistent with him. So I can tell he is going to use Johnny Smith in a very gadgety way, because that touchdown was essentially a pop pass. It was a touchdown run, essentially, right? I do think he'll be very gadgety with Johnny Smith, but sometimes gadgety is a little inconsistent there. So I like Smith as a streaming option, but I would prefer to go with the more potentially stable options over him, like a Hunter Henry for sure. But Jonnu has, we're deep at streaming tight end. We're deep for sure. From Arnold, please talk about Nico Collins. I need to be talked off the ledge. So here's the thing. I'm only going to mildly talk you off the ledge here. The offensive line is a major issue. They suffered an injury, but even then, I'm sorry, when you suffer one offensive lineman injury, it should not fall apart like that. Like, when you look at the Chargers and when they lost Rashawn Slater, hey, your goal as an organization should be to have depth at your offensive line, and it should not crumble like that when one player goes out, even if it's a superstar, massively paid offensive lineman, right? You should be able to pivot, right? Chargers did. So for me to look at the Texans right there and see that, man, it's poorly organized. It's not deep. I worry about CJ Stroud. That said, the Rams defense is legitimately wildly underrated. They gave the Texans fits that a lot of other teams won't do, right? They're just on another level, in my opinion, in terms of their pass rush. So from that perspective, don't panic. CJ will have better days. He'll be able to stay up a little bit more. It's clear that I don't think the rookies are a threat to Nico Collins whatsoever. So the volume will be there for Nico. And this week, I think, is a nice bounce back potential opportunity for him. I like the matchup here. So you're good. You're good. It's not as bad as it seems. Like, legitimate concerns for a lot of other guys, but I think Nico, from a pure volume perspective, will be fine. Rams defense is just an absolute juggernaut. Boy, I hope Tyreek does not go to the Steelers there. Well, with Aaron Rodgers, Jesus. I feel like they might be upset and disagree. Ride some waves, Tara. Make a public lead so we can play fantasy next year with me. Yeah, you know what? Let's do it. Let's do it next year. Let's do it. Especially now that I've got the YouTube channel started, for sure. Let's see here. Going through and seeing if I've got any good or any other questions that I missed. Del J. Preseason, I traded away Pickens for Ridley, got CD, traded away Pickens for Ridley, got CD, JMO, Pittman is my other wide receivers as I'm put. No, you're not cooked. You're good. CD, I actually like that you traded Pickens away for Ridley. That works out in your favor, in my opinion. Long term, I prefer Ridley to George Pickens. I'm sorry. I didn't believe, he is who he is from a personality perspective. When he gets frustrated, he will take plays off. He will, be inconsistent. It is what it is. CD is going to bounce back. Those drops that he had, that is not CD Lamb. That's not who he is. He legitimately felt bad about it. He is a different person than George Pickens. George Pickens has drops. He doesn't care. CD has drops. You could tell that man felt bad. So CD is going to be fine. It was just a weird blip. It's not going to happen again. Well, for the most part, he'll get out. He'll be fine. He'll be bounced back, and he'll be CeeDee Lamb. Jameson, I am mildly concerned about the Detroit offense without Ben Johnson. I thought that they would be able to retain what they had. I'm really curious. We'll learn a lot this week because it is another bad defensive matchup for them. But we will learn a lot this week if Detroit has actual problems or if the Packers defense just really took that much of a leap and they really are about to win a Super Bowl. So we're going to learn. We will learn this week real quick. Pittman, you're fine. I liked what I saw out. I mean, it was a good week, right? I'm trying to keep I have one team with Pittman. I'm trying to keep my expectations in check because at the end of the day, Daniel Jones is inconsistent, right? But I was really happy to see the usage for him with Tyler Warren and Josh Downs down a little bit. Will that play out as the season goes on? Don't know. But Pittman could be in life. Hey, if Daniel Jones gives us a bounce back season here for Michael Pittman, I would love him forever. Yeah, I will get it. If Daniel Jones gives Michael Pittman a top 12 season, I will get a Daniel Jones Indianapolis jersey. I will do that for him. If he can do that for me, I will do that for him. Let's see here. You know that I commented about being a Packers fan. Heartbreaker. Your niece's dad is a Packers fan. Had to see her those awful colors. I tell you, I'm such a Packers fan that growing up, it's funny, I'm wearing yellow. But growing up, our parent, me and my brother's parents allowed us to paint our rooms. Not paint, we didn't do it. I was a kid. But to decide what we painted our room colors, according to our NFL teams. And he's a Titans fan, so he had a nice little sky blue, beautiful. I'm a Packers fan, so I'm like, pick that sucker Packers yellow. And it was God, it was ugly. Can you imagine like the sun beating down on the yellow on a daily basis? That was my walls. Awful decision, but I was dedicated. Terrible decision. Chargers O-line is elite. That is right for sure. Let's see. I think, yeah, we're all good. I caught up. Yay. I caught up to all the questions. Chat was live. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was an ugly room, man. Jesus Christ. And instead of like, I guess I should have asked them to like spend some money and get me some Packers posters, but they didn't. I got a Packers calendar for Christmas one year, and I like tore out the pictures of all the Packers, and I'll show my age. This was like the Packers that I had. It was like Bubba Franks and Amon-Ra St, and like, it was. And I would tape them up on the walls, so they were kind of aligned around the walls of this green or of this yellow room. It was quite a sight. It was quite ugly and quite abrasive to the eyes for sure. But that wraps things up. I appreciate you all tuning in. I appreciate you joining in the chat. Wonderful conversation here. Love it when the chat is active here. As a reminder, guys, it is a podcast, right? We're answering questions live, but it is posted as a podcast. So if you could subscribe to the Dear Miss Fantasy podcast on all platforms, if you're not already subscribed, that would be amazing. And Player Profiler as well, because that is what the podcast is through. And of course, you can always follow me and subscribe to me on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at It's Tera Time, ITSTERATIME, pretty much everywhere. I know that you guys will have plenty of questions. So as always, if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop me a comment on any of the social media platforms or YouTube video or anything like that. If you've got any start-sit questions or anything throughout the week, for sure, I will be there for you. But other than that, good luck with your lineups. I hope that, I hope that week 2 is a lot better, right? From a fantasy perspective for us. And that our superstars perform. And specifically for you guys, for my one viewer right there, I hope Nico Collins has a fantastic day. I have no Nico. Maybe best ball Nico, but no redraft Nico. And I hope he has a wonderful top 5 week there for you. All right, guys. Appreciate it. I will talk to you all next week.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.